Hi guys, and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. Let's jump right to the good stuff. Remember my sources who told me about the R6 Mark II long before everyone else was talking about it? Well, this week they've come through with some new exciting news about Canon's plans for 2023. According to them, we won't see an R1 or an R5 Mark II this year. And while I'm quite bummed about not seeing an R1 before 2024, I'm quite happy to hopefully not see an R5 Mark II this year. I think the current R5 is still very competitive. Any current update would just be minor, and I really think an update to the R5 should have a big impact just like the initial R5 had when it was released back in the day. I also have some bad news for everyone, and especially astrophotographers who are hoping for some faster wide-angle prime lenses, because according to my sources, this is also not something Canon will be focusing on this year, so it might take a little bit longer to see like a 24 f1.4 lens, for instance. So what is Canon actually going to be releasing then this year? I've been told that we will not see one, not two, but actually 3 big telezooms released in 2023. Ever since Canon has released the fantastic RF 100 to 500mm lens, we haven't really seen much or any innovation in that sort of longer lens range for Canon. They have updated, or should I say MacGyvered, the big prime lenses like that RF 600mm lens, but there hasn't been any sort of true innovation or truly newly designed lenses. So seeing some of these zooms coming into the market would be fantastic. One lens I'm expecting to see definitely is the 200 to 500 f4 lens with a 1.4 extender built in. To me, that would be quite an exciting lens, and a lens I would probably have a hard time not to buy, because I think it would be great for photos, but also fantastic for filming birds in the field. When it comes to guessing what the other two lenses will be, I find it a little bit harder, but I could imagine seeing something like an f2.8 120 to 300mm lens for sports shooters, a 200 to 400mm lens, or even the rumored 300 to 700mm f5.6 lens also with a built-in 1.4 extender. What lenses do you guys think will be released, and what would you love to see? I think the 200 to 400 doesn't make as much sense because it would double up a lot with the 200 to 500mm lens, unless that 200 to 400 could be much smaller and much lighter, but even then I think there would still be a lot of overlap with the 200 to 500mm lens. I do think a f2.8 120 to 300mm lens would be a very intriguing lens for many sports shooters for indoors and outdoors, so I could definitely see Canon doing a lens like that. And for me, as a bird and wildlife photographer, I also find the idea of a 300 to 700mm f5.6 lens with a built-in 1.4 extender very intriguing, especially if the weight and the size isn't too big. If all of these lenses are L lenses, they will probably come with eye-watering price tags, unfortunately, but I could also see Canon possibly making one of these lenses in one of the cheaper STM format and maybe do an f8 200 to 400 or 300 to 700mm zoom lens that would be much smaller, much lighter, and also much cheaper. There's also been a patent about RF 150 to 600mm lens a long time ago, and I think that would be a quite exciting lens for a lot of you guys, but Canon has never really shown the willingness to do a 100 or 200 to 600mm lens, and it will also double up a lot with the 100 to 500mm lens, so we'll have to see what happens to that rumor. All in all though, I think it's pretty exciting to think about these different kind of telezooms that we will likely be seeing in 2023, because I think they will offer us a lot of fantastic options in the field, especially if there will be some versions coming out with the built-in 1.4 extenders. Are you guys unhappy with your image editing? You're not quite sure where to start and how to make your own images look amazing? If so, then let me help you with my masterclass and my process to save time and to learn exactly how to make your own images stand out. With my process, I allow you with just one click to transform your dull raw files into a great starting point for the editing process. And in my masterclass, I teach you step by step everything you need to know in Photoshop about image editing to make your own images look amazing. So if this is of interest to you, make sure to check this out down there in the description. So while we may not be seeing a camera released in 2023 from Canon, it looks like Sony and Nikon are lining up to be releasing a whole bunch of cameras this year. For Sony, we definitely expect to see the i9 Mark III, and it seems like Nikon is setting up a few events over the next few months to hopefully at least give us a development announcement for the Z8 and maybe even something like a Z6 Mark III as well. Once announced and released, I hope it won't take Nikon too long to actually produce and ship those cameras. because otherwise most people won't likely be touching one of those Z8 or Z6 Mark III cameras before 2024. And that would be a real shame, because I think there's a big need for those cheaper cameras with great capabilities in the Nikon lineup. Because when the Z9 came out, there were substantial delays with the shipping, and I have friends who've been waiting for almost a year now on the 800mm 6.3 PF lens. So hopefully Nikon will get these production issues a little bit more under control, because it can be quite upsetting for people to wait that long for their gear, especially if they've already prepaid it. And now check out this photo of a camera called Nikon ZXX, whatever that means. Do you have any ideas what it could be? Is this going to be a new camera that will be released at some point? Or is it just some prototype of maybe an older Z6 camera, or prototype of a newer camera that somehow fell into someone's hands on Twitter? What do you guys think? Are we going to see a Nikon ZXX? Probably not, but what camera do you think could actually stand behind that? Nikon has also released a firmware update for the Z9, and one of the most interesting sentences in the release I thought was that it says there's autofocus improvements for the detection of low contrast subjects. So hopefully Nikon keeps tweaking and improving the Z9 autofocus. Have any of you guys installed it yet? Is it any better? Let me know. You guys remember that video from maybe about a year ago where they had a meow sound on the Z9 whenever you click the shutter? And while we're not quite sure whether that meow sound will actually come into real life at some stage in the future, it seems like Nikon is still working on making custom shutter sounds for the Z9. Are you guys interested at all in custom sounds on a Z9? Or are you just happy with the current shutter sounds that you can dial in? Personally, I must admit that I prefer completely silent cameras at this stage in my photography career, so custom sounds or any sort of sound is not that interesting to me, but I think a lot of people would actually find it quite fun if there was some unique sounds your camera could make. As you can see, by me being still in my bedroom studio, that we haven't fully moved into the new house yet, because ironically we're waiting on the beds to arrive so we can actually sleep in the new house. But we have been doing some work in the yard. There were some trees in a very unfortunate spot that were also not good for the birds, so we decided to chop them down. But the good thing was that the base of those trees made the perfect foundation for bird feeder. So I set that up, and I've already seen some awesome birds like pale-headed rosellas come into the yard. So this is something I'm looking forward to turning my backyard into a bird paradise by planting a lot of native bird attracting plants, and also setting up a few fruit, water, and maybe a seed feeder to see what birds I can attract, and hopefully do some nice bird shooting in my own backyard. And before I go, please make sure to check out some of my other videos, like why you shouldn't be using low ISOs, or my extreme low light photography where I'm photographing birds of paradise in deep dark rainforests and give you a lot of tips and tricks how to tackle these difficult situations. And like always, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and I will see you in the next video very soon. Bye guys.